Welcome, Guyana, to another episode of The Environment Matters. I am Ladonna Kissoon, your moderator. So, on our last episode, we were pleased to have Mr. Joshua Mudley, who enlightened us about all that has happened at the EPA for 2019. Today, our guest is no other than our Executive Director, Dr. Vincent Adams, and he will be zeroing on all that the agency has done for 2019 and telling us about our great future for 2020. Welcome, Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Ladonna. Nice to be here.
So, Dr. Adams, let's get into our discussion for today.
Okay.
So, in the past, we would have highlighted that we have two new additional offices. Could you share with us what persuaded you to have those two offices and why did you choose those two regions?
Well, to be honest, the office on the quarantine at the whim was it had started construction before I arrived, so I came at the tail end of the construction. So that was decided before I came. It so happened that I think it was an appropriate location and a location of necessity. Now, in consultation with others, made the decision Linden, which I think was Linden. Of course, I don't know if it changed, but when I grew up, it was the second largest city after Georgetown. The three cities were Linden, New Amsterdam, and Georgetown. And I thought, and it was right in the middle of the mining area. As a matter of fact, it's the tongue where you access most of the mining. Of course, at bauxite, you can get a Kokwani. You could even get to Lethem and those places where a lot of mining is taking place. I thought it was a nice central location. And of course, I'm from Linden, just for full disclosure. But I thought it was an appropriate place for us to locate the second office. As you know, we're planning. The plan is to have at least one office by the end of the year in all 10 regions. So I don't think that any region will lose out. This here is just the start.
Okay. So, what region would we be heading to next?
Well, we've already obtained property in Anna Regina. As you know, we have officers today looking at Lethem, and of course I said at least one office in every region. It could be more than one office depending on the activities, etc., and the availability of space. I've been in contact with the other agencies that already exist in those regions and to see if space is available in those regions, and we can share office space while we, eventually get to our own building as we expand. So we're looking right. Anna Regina may be the next. We've obtained the property. We demolished the old building that was there, and thanks to the local folks the REO that afforded us that property that was no longer in use. We demolished the building and we're preparing this year to construct a new building. So that will most likely be the next, if not Lethem, because the space might be available already in Lethem, or if another office space becomes available, which would be easier, then they can move up the order.
Okay, so look out, Region 2, we're headed your way.
That's right.
Yes, and so most certainly not far behind would be Region 9.
Yes.
So I'm certain that, with all the new offices being opened, how would you say they have been facilitating given the agency's mandate at hand?
Yes, and this is really important. As that it has been really an inconvenience. I've seen it firsthand when we had only one office when I arrived, which is Georgetown. So we were servicing the entire country, and you know how difficult and challenging it is for our customers, meaning the public and business, for them to come all the way from the outreaches of the country, travel probably all day, all night to get here to do business. It costs them not only time and inconvenience, but a lot of money also. So, we serve the public, and in order to serve the public, we got to go to the public rather than the public come to us. So, without question, I think it's with, there's no, it's obvious that it's welcomed by the public and the citizens who we serve, and it even makes our job easier in terms of being there on site. Complaints come in all the time, so we can go visit in real time rather than we having to wait for days. If somebody has a complaint or if there's an issue, an environmental upset, we can readily go visit and do our determination right on the spot rather than waiting for days. So I think it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Definitely. Immediate response. That's what I usually
That's
tell
exactly
persons
correct.
when they
Yes,
call.
immediate response.
Immediate
Yes,
response.
yes.
So I know, with all changes, there must be some form of difficulties. So could you tell us if there are any, some of the difficulties that these regional offices may be facing at this time?
Well, initially, and yeah, I mean, we could have waited until we've got everything in place, but that's not my style. I prefer to hit it head on, and do what we can with what we have until we can do better. Now, the biggest challenge is we set up these two new offices. We have new employees, but then one of the biggest things is transportation, for example, that they can have at the offices itself, so that they can go make their runs. At the current time, we've got a plan with them when we're going out for site visit in their areas and their regions, and then we take vehicles from here. And vehicles has been a challenge since I arrived. We've increased the fleet from about one, I like to say 1.5 fleet vehicles to access the entire country. So now we're up to about 7, I think 8.
About 8, yeah.
Yeah, about 8 vehicles. But most of the officers are in Georgetown, but we nevertheless we go to these two sites at this current time, and with officers from Georgetown. So that's the challenge. I would like we're gonna eventually, within a very short period of time, we will get, each site will have a vehicle. We've got some other vehicles in the pipeline, and as soon as they arrive in the next couple of months or so, each site will have their vehicle, and that would make things much better. So the office might be kind of independent, where they don't have to rely upon us to go out and do their field visits, etc., in those areas. So, so that's the major challenge. Of course, it's always, everything is dependent upon the budget. In terms of how much money we have to get everything we need at these site offices.
Oh, yes. But, with time, everything does fall into
Absolutely.
place. So
Yep.
time will definitely be on our side, and
Mm-hmm.
let's hold on to hope and faith.
Yep.
That it will all definitely work out. So I know one of our major transformation at the agency in 2019 was the restructuring. And
Yes.
I know quite a few persons may have on their mind what was your reason or reasons for the restructuring of the agency in 2019.
Yes. I spent a big part of most of my professional career working abroad and really working with other countries too. And so, I've seen a lot. It was worked in a very structured environment. So I knew what worked and what doesn't work. And I came in with, with this traditional approach, and I came all excited, with coming with a strategic plan in hand, it was all ready to implement. And when I got here, I was kind of surprised as to what I found, which was far less than I had expected, to be honest, in terms of the maturity of the agency and the structuring of the agency and the way that we approached business. So the first thing I asked for was which is our bread and butter core mission, which is, we issue permits and authorizations. Of course, we go out there for inspections, which means when we issue a permit and authorization, we have to make sure that these operators are operating in compliance, because or else you're impacting the environment, or you're even causing health and safety issues to the rest of the public if you do not operate within the permits, or you do not comply. So I said, okay, let's see what's the status of every single permit. And lo and behold, in order for us to plan ahead, and 500 or 40% of the permits came back, they'd all expired. Over 500 permits, some over 10, 15 years, which was kind of shocking to me. I didn't expect that. So I had to just change strategy immediately and just brought everybody, all hands on deck. This became the priority. And so the entire staff worked those permits and got everybody in compliance. As a matter of fact, it was really an amazing feat by the staff in the agency. So I had to change my approach so that I looked for the best way of approaching things now that I've learned what exists. And so even though I brought all those knowledge, I learned that you can't go every place with what you learn other places. You just gotta tailor it. Bring what you learn and tailor it to. So I changed the entire structure, the way it was structured. So now it's by sector. First it was by a kind of like media, water, but I think it's best here for us to do it by sector. So that's how it's structured right now. The divisions are divided up into sectors. Oil and gas, for example, is a sector. Mining is a sector. Gas stations, we had several hundreds of gas stations. Infrastructure, so we divided up into, waste management and industry. So those are the sectors. So it's divided up along sectors, and I believe this is the best way and most efficient way to manage the EPA.
Okay, so you've brought me to my next question.
Okay.
In terms of this new structure, have you found it to be effective and efficient? Is more work being done on the new structure? Permits being issued faster, and the level of compliance. So how effective has it been?
Well, there are several other things that I wouldn't credit everything to the restructuring, but I think the restructuring, I think everyone, they're clear as to the roles and responsibility of every single person right now, or every single division or unit. And so we built, as a matter of fact, this year's budget was built from bottoms up, meaning that every single one of these units had to develop their own budget, which means that their entire staff was involved in the budget. It's not as if a bunch of managers got there and pulled numbers out of the air. Everybody had input to the budget. So everybody now is determining what needs to be done in each of, because they're the experts in their own divisions. So yes, I believe we've only been restructured for a few months, but I think the most important thing is that I think people understand their roles and responsibility and even changing their culture.
Definitely. Right. So I know with the whole restructuring, specifically focus on our human capital and all the
Yes.
major changes in our staff complement
Yes.
and our skill sets for 2019. Would you like to share with the public some of the changes that were made in 2019 with regards to our staff complement to the agency? And as it is, do you believe that the staff complement may be adequate enough to effectively manage the mandate of the agency?
Okay, that's one of the major areas that we've got to build upon. One of the areas that I meant, one of the big deficiencies, fundamentally in any environmental protection agency, the building block of that agency, or the foundation, is in strong science and engineering. For us to make good decisions, you go there and there's a pollutant, you need to understand what the pollutant is or the contamination is, to advise the people who are being impacted as to, or even to clean up. You got to understand the chemicals to know exactly what to use in the chemical. You can make things worse. You got to evaluate to see if it's above any kind of limit and advise people. And if you don't notice, you're even putting the people's health at risk. So when I arrived again, we didn't have a single engineer on staff. We had, I think, four chemistry majors, which was a good thing. We had some biology, but the rest of the staff were essentially, they were environmental they had the environmental studies program from UG, but the science in that program was very, very limited, if any at all. So one of the areas that I've been focusing on is to develop that area of strong science and engineering. Um, Within the last, months or so, we were able to get. I think we've gotten like 4 engineers on staff. We've been focusing on hiring science people with science backgrounds. Um, we're still hiring the environmental the folks who graduated from UG because they still have a role to play. But we have that. Matter of fact, one of the units or divisions that we currently have is what we call a technical division, which comprise of those folks who can cross cut or advise each of these units. They're going to do the strong science and the major areas of specialties in that technical unit and advise the other units. So we have been building. We've hired, when I came here, we had like 97 employees. We probably now at about 118. It's the intention for us to get up to about 200 by the end of the year, and by next year get up to 300, and who knows how far the agency. But we're going to be putting very, very strong emphasis on science and engineering. Even outside of the science and engineering, we still have a basic. We got a very shortage. We're very short in staff. There was a 2015 audit done by the Ministry of Finance, as a matter of fact. And the Ministry of Finance said that the minimum staffing level in 2015, even without oil and gas, should be 262. And when you look at the numbers, everything has been increasing in terms of the activity, and but the staffing level had remained constant. So here we are without the oil and gas at 262 in 2016. And then we just evaluated how many people we're going to need to oversee the oil and gas, and it's close to 40. So which means that we should, at the baseline, we should have at least 300 people. And, if you escalate that, because we were expecting with the economy quadrupling within the next 4 years, I mean, that's astronomical. The staff level, the number of activities, and as you know, the EPA, everything passes through the EPA, whether it's hotels, gas stations, road construction, even up to apartment buildings. So everything passes through the EPA. We look at the current number of permits that we have just in store right now is over 1,600. And again, we don't want to go back to where permits expired, so we're going to have to be out in the field, in strong numbers. So we're going to need a whole bunch of people we're going to need people in these site offices, for example. So, but we've got to have the right mix of skills to take care of this. And there's a strong deficiency in it, but we will get there. We're developing in-house, as a matter of fact. The good thing about it, it's a very young staff. And so there's lots of room to grow. There are few, we've been advertising for certain skills, but we've not been getting the skills, like I said, in strong science and engineering. So one of the things that we've been doing, we brought in besides myself, there are 2 others, really people who retired from the United States or Canada, for example, with lots of experience to come in, and not to build a career, but it's to mentor and train the current staff as part of that development. We've also increased the opportunities for the staff to participate in international conferences, to go abroad and do training. I think that has increased astronomically within the last year or so. I don't think there's anybody in the agency now who have not gotten that opportunity, several times. And it's more or less networking, and when you develop that network, then you start getting your knowledge and consultation from the people who you network with. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on. The internship program this year, for the first time, it's our intention to hire at least 10 interns during the summer. And what that does for us, besides helping the student, and not just for giving them pocket change, developing their skills, but at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to have a look at these students. And we may hire all 10, depending on how they perform and their aptitudes, etc. Or, but at least we get a chance to look at them so that we can hire the best.
That's a good opportunity because personally for myself, I started as an intern at my
Hmm.
first job, and when I was finished with my degree, that same
Yes.
office hired me as a full-time staff. So I know that is definitely a great opportunity for young people that are now coming out of
And I
the
hope they
STEM
come in with the right
field.
attitude because a lot of kids believe they come in and it's a summer job, they get pocket money, but it's a long interview because normally when you hire blindly, somebody comes in, they've got a good resume, it looks good on paper, they come in for an interview, half an hour or so. It's hard to judge. You hire them, but when you have a look at them for an entire summer, you say, okay,
Yes.
this is these are the people that I need definitely. So it's good and it's a good investment not only for the agency but also for the students.
Yes, definitely. So you would have made mention just now that a lot of the staff would have been, exposed to overseas training. I'm not sure if you will be able to remember off the bat, but would you share with us some of the trainings that staff was exposed to, both
Yes,
local content and international or regional?
yes. Well, the one that comes to mind, which I think it was really remarkable. Um, Ghana became just a few months ago. Which was a great accomplishment for us in such a short space of time. We became a full member of what is called IOPER, the International Offshore Petroleum. It's for the regulators
Yeah.
for international offshore, which means you had and it's for the major producing countries: Britain, United States, Canada, Australia, all the big countries. So you have a representative from the government in this IOPA council or committee. So we were co-opted in as a full member, and because of that, now we are exposed to a lot of these big international conferences. And so when I attended the conference to be, was to be inaugurated as a member, they one of the things that were discussed it was this eDNA, environmental DNA, and it's just like human DNA, where you can go out in the ocean. One of our biggest challenges here is doing a baseline study of what exists, turtles, what type of living organisms that we've got to protect, the biodiversity. So you gotta before you start producing oil, you should do a baseline study or to know what is going to be impacted and how sensitive
Definitely.
they are to producing oil, etc. And even the noise from boats and ships with a frequent movement, and even doing seismic surveys because you introduce sound into the water, it could have. There's all kinds of studies that where it impacts, it affects whales and those type of things. So you have to know what's in your environment and how it's
Yeah.
going to be impacted. But it took a lot of effort. Just imagine you've got thousands of square miles of offshore it's almost impossible to go to every spot. But what you can do now with this eDNA is a mechanism where you can just take water samples, and because of the shedding of skin and the DNA from animals through excretion and their skins and everything else, that is in our water. You can't see it, but it's in there. So you can take the water in various places, and you can even leave these boats or mechanisms from different spots and collect the samples. But from that you can characterize exactly what's there, what type of turtles or any other animal or organisms, and see what type is there, in what quantities, etc., and where they're located, and even how they're migrating. Um, so it's a very, very new technology. It's just an amazing technology. Well, guess what? Just a couple of months ago, they had the second international conference in Florida. So we sent two of our young employees, just out of school basically, sent them there, and here they were rubbing shoulders with the best scientists in the whole world. So now they've become the only two Guyanese as young as they are, um, who are well versed in this new science. As a matter of fact, um, because they've built this network and have gotten so close to these scientists, they wanted to have the next conference in Guyana. But of course, we weren't prepared for it this year. So, what they're planning to do is have a workshop here in Guyana. So that's going to be a big deal because it's not only for characterizing the ocean, you can do it also for the rivers, you can also do it even for the soil. Um, so that's probably one of the biggest accomplishments. Now, the other thing is, of course, is sending people to these international conference. The other international conferences are joining these big international scientific associations and even professional associations, such as the Air and Waste Management Association, and going to these conferences. So we've been sending, and of course, to a lot. We've been to places like Peru and Canada and the United States and Britain. Yeah, we're going all over in Australia, Kenya. We've been going all over the place in the last year. It's kind of interesting because these days, because we are affording to say, it's difficult to even find people to go sometimes because almost everybody is.
It's going somewhere.
Yeah, but
it
and
has
it's not
already
it's
been
not to
out.
go. As you know, it's not. You're not just going there for fun because you remember. You know what's one of the requirement. When you come back, you got to write a report and then you got to present it to the rest of the staff as to what you learned there and how are you going to apply it to how we do. So it's not just going and having a good time and coming back and no, you require within 15 days, as a matter of fact, to write the report and then to present it to the senior management and then to the staff exactly what you learned and most importantly, how could you apply what you learned to these conferences and meetings to the agency. So it's really a big accomplishment for us.
Yes. And I know one of the most important things about going to these international conferences and workshops and training is networking. You always
Yep.
talk about, us being able to network and ensure that we put ourselves out there and we're
Yep.
very open to getting knowledge and any
Yep.
sorts of training from anybody that's there and that would be willing and able to afford us the opportunity.
Yes.
So yes, the agency has been going places, and
Yes.
right off the bat, we do hope and look forward to continue training and people being exposed to all these different levels of trainings and conferences and just being able to put ourselves out there and being known.
Yep. It's a key part of developing capacity.
Yeah. So I know recently you mentioned about having to gain more employment at the agency. So for local content, what could Guyanese look forward to with regards to employment opportunities?
Well, like I said, we're beating the bushes right now. We had advertised, I think, twice last year to have Guyanese apply. We have not gone outside of Guyanese. Of course, I'm sure that stuff went on social media because there were a few applications that came in from outside of Guyana. But we are looking, as like I said, we're hoping to double the staff this year, triple it next year, and even go beyond that because when this economy starts to boom, we've got offices in every region, more than one office is most likely, especially like in the mining area, in the highly developed areas such as the Baltica region and those places. Amsterdam, Quarantine, Kokwani, Linda. I mean that entire. So we are expecting. I think at the minimum, we're going to have 300. So there's no question. There's going to be lots of opportunities, and the good thing about it, we're making it very competitive. We've been even increasing people's salaries. The only commitment is you're going to be well rewarded for performance.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be based on performance. We're changing the entire culture, and it helps not only the agency, but it even helps the employee to develop that higher standard. So regardless of whether you stay with the agency or not, that culture and discipline will stay with you forever. for your career. Because, like I said, the good thing about it is that we've got a very young staff, and this is a time for learning.
So you're not only, you know, helping us along the line, but you're molding us
Yeah,
as
that's right.
young people to, you know, make our mark in society. So thank you very much as the staff.
Well, as you know, one of I think one of the biggest, when I came here, or when I was about to come here, I was getting all kinds of advice, and they say, hey, the culture that you came from is totally different here. I think you're gonna go bite off more than you can chew, because the work ethics here and everything else is totally different. I didn't believe it, because I don't care where you go. People are people. If you show them the respect, if you empower them, but you've got to change the discipline and the culture. So I came here, and um, it was less than I expected. People coming to work anytime, leaving anytime. So I've changed all that. So people can change if they have the right leadership. For example, people are now, the office is open during lunch. It never used to be. Um, a couple of people pay the price for not providing service to customers during lunch. You've got to be there on time. You know that I've got every morning, to keep everybody focused. I've got an 8:15 meeting in my office with all the senior managers, and I close the door at 8:15, not 8:16, and I take names. All of that have changed now. Everybody there. As a matter of fact, they're tripping over each other to get in there by 8:05 now. And it's not only that meeting. Everything has, people, when you start embedding that kind of discipline, and understand who you work for. You work for the customers. One of the things that I've been telling people is that we work for the public, and for the citizens of this country, and it's not the other way around, which was another culture that we had to overcome, where we thought that we always were doing people a favor. They come here and they got to appear as if they're begging us, and that's not the case. They pay our salaries. They provide whatever we have to provide for our living. So those are the fundamental. And as long as we can change that and maintain it, it will make a big difference, not only for the agency. Now, on the other hand, the one thing that we have stopped tolerating the disrespect for the agency and its officers. I came here, and the first meeting I had with my officers, when I asked, okay, tell me what are some of the challenges, and everybody jumped up and said, totally disrespectful, people that the ice pass us, we're toothless tiger. I mean, there was instances where people spat on officers. Well, I can tell you all of that is over with as far as I'm concerned, because we're not going to tolerate that. So we're going to show our customers and citizens the respect that they do. We serve them, we work for them, but at the same time, we're not going to tolerate those type of disrespect and abuse.
Definitely, definitely. So you made mention just now about, having local content for employment, but you did also indicate that to some extent we've been struggling to get persons, well, suitable
Yes.
enough. So at any point in time, do you think that it might come to you having to recruit persons from overseas?
Yes. And I think that's where we're heading with the petroleum unit. I get beaten up every day by the public and people who are really paying attention to the petroleum production offshore. Well, not unfortunately, but the problem is the petroleum expertise is it's an expertise that is very kind of unique. It's not that everybody, you can find civil engineers, mechanical engineers, and electrical engineers. Petroleum is very specialized. And in the unit that we've set up, we've already set up that unit working with the World Bank. The positions are there already, the structure of that organization is there already. But it calls for a lot of skill, experience, and degrees in petroleum engineering with the experience. And we can't find anybody in Guyana, so there's no question that we're going to have to go abroad. Now, the downside of that is that going abroad to try to recruit people is going to cost us probably a whole lot more. But if we have to do it, we have to do it, and it's going to be well worth it to provide that oversight. We don't want a disaster to occur because, we didn't spend a few hundred of thousands of dollars to pay an employee. So it's going to be a challenge. So that's what's going to, when we look at our budget, etc. But we will have to. I don't think we've got any choices here now, especially in that petroleum unit. The rest of the unit, maybe we can get along. We can find people and provide some training and experience for them, but not in petroleum. There's nobody. Of course, that we had about to start that petroleum engineering program at the University of Guyana.
Yeah.
It wasn't getting off the ground, and I was responsible for having to lead that. There were some setbacks, so we're going to see how that goes in the future. I noticed the university has advertised for a new vice chancellor, so we'll see what happens. But without question, we have to go abroad for at least the petroleum part.
Okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back.
Gosh,
Morning, Miss Sonia.
Morning, Miss Cheryl. I'm late for work.
I noticed the other day y'all had a big campaign with them police officers, so shutting down them people barbecue, wedding, dance. Man, how y'all expect these people to make money and survive?
Oh, Miss Cheryl, that is far from the truth. The EPA and the Guyana Police Force are actually working together to ensure that persons who conduct certain businesses and activities are authorized. We've tried to allow them to adhere to the noise regulations.
Well, this gonna be a new law. What law is this?
These laws were always in place. It's now that we're getting all these complaints at the agency, we are trying to enforce them. The Environmental Protection Act has been in place since 1996, and it states that persons and businesses must apply for environmental authorization before operating a sound-making device.
Well, girl, I never know this thing is prior to the law.
So if you're keeping a barbecue or an open-air function, like a wedding or a concert, especially in your community, right, and you're playing a music system, you have to apply for a short-term noise permit. And for persons that operate in a business and you got generators and stuff, you have to apply for a long-term permit. And that is applicable to bars and hotspots and clubs also.
Well, now that you explain it, I understand it. It's unfair to the elderly, sick people, and even them little children.
That is correct. According to the World Health Organization, loud noise can cause stress, sleep deprivation, and hearing impairment. And I'm sure you wouldn't want that.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you for explaining it, Miss Sonia.
For more information, you can contact the EPA at 225-5471 or visit our office at Ganji Street, North Sophia, Georgetown.
From the gift of Iwakrama to the groundbreaking low-carbon development strategy, Guyana, the land of many waters, land of the giants, has been a leader on environmental management and biodiversity conservation in the Caribbean and on the world stage. Guyana is now embarking on a bold new path that places environment at the center of its development. Our country's Green State Development Strategy is our country's long-term development plan that seeks to reorient and diversify Guyana's economy, reducing reliance on traditional sectors and opening up new sustainable income and investment opportunities. The GSDS will provide the foundation for an inclusive green economy, which will result in improved human well-being and social equity while reducing environmental risks. In 2016, a bold move was made to ban styrofoam food containers through legislation and enforcement. We join the rest of the world in beating plastic pollution for World Environment Day and beyond.
Are you involved in a business or thinking about starting one? Do you know there may be environmental impacts from business activities? According to the Environmental Protection Act of 1996, businesses such as gas stations, rice mills, large-scale agriculture and poultry farms, large-scale mining and forestry operations, hotels, and resorts must be authorized. Persons proposing any of these activities need to submit an application for environmental authorization to the EPA.
Welcome back to the Environment Matters. Again, I am your moderator, Ladonna Kissoon, and with me we have our Executive Director, Dr. Vincent Adams. So, Dr. Adams, we were just talking about, our budding oil and gas sector, and you may or may not have to recruit overseas staff, but I know we're presently working with what we have in terms of our system, and with all the changes that have been happening. What changes has the agency gone through in order to regulate the new oil and gas sector?
Well, of course, the Environmental Protection Agency is governed by the Environmental Protection Agency Act that was written in 1996. The Act, I don't think you can find the word petroleum in the Act because it was way before oil was discovered. So there's nothing there, and so we've got to rewrite the Act, which is a very, very high priority right now for us. However, we're fortunate that the act is very broad. It basically says protect the environment. So you could protect the environment means making sure we protect them from any oil spill or any contamination. Now, which means it's not an act, which means you don't have regulations, because the regulations basically fall out of the act. However, and I get this question all the time, well, we're not ready because we don't have regulations, etc. The second part is accurate, but the first part of not being ready is not fully accurate. And let me tell you why. Petroleum is, offshore or onshore, it's been going on for hundreds of years. There are all kinds of regulations. As a matter of fact, regulations up to recently were developing the big oil spill out at Macondo in the Gulf by British Petroleum. Because of that oil spill, 2 agencies were set up in the United States to run that, to make sure that it doesn't happen again, and to make sure that there are all kinds of regulations. There's another big disaster that occurred in the North Sea going way back, I think, in 1988. There are all kinds of regulations that were developed out of that. So we are fortunate to be where we are in that we don't have to go through those type of disasters to develop regulation. So those regulations were developed. So those are the regulations that we're using to oversee and to monitor and to bring into compliance, the operations that we have here in Guyana. So it's not accurate to say there are no regulations. We're looking at all of the regulations across the world and even adopting the most stringent of those regulations. And if we're even going over and beyond the requirements, for example, insurance. Let's say we have a spill, for example, and one of the things that we, meaning the Environment Protection Agency, with the support and concurrence and working together with the Department of Energy under Dr. Baino and the Bank of Guyana under the governor of the Bank of Guyana. So we are working. I think Dr. Gango thing is Dr. Gango. So we work together, and what one of the requirements, which I think we, as far as I know, this country has been the only country, or we've obtained the only unlimited liability coverage in the world, meaning that EPGL, which is the company subsidiary of ExxonMobil and Hess and another company. If there's a spill in the Gulf, there's insurance up to, I think, $2.5 billion. But then what happens, like in the Gulf, the cost of cleaning up was, I think it ran in the 60 something billions of dollars. So if you don't have insurance after 2.5, so we said, well, okay, what happens after 2.5? You know, and you don't have insurance, who's going to pick that up? And we were able to obtain insurance, well, not insurance, but to say that the parent company, meaning Exxon Mobil, and the parent company for Hess, they're going to have to cover anything over and beyond the insurance. So that's why when I say unlimited, it doesn't say unlimited in the permit, but I think we're the only country who was able to obtain that. So I know that there's fear that something may happen, or we don't have the expertise, we don't have the regulations. We do have regulations. There's no question. We're using regulations that already exist. And even when we write our own regulations, you know, it's going to be a very slim chance that we would change any of those regulations. To put regulations in place, it takes a lot of science and development, and you don't go reinvent the wheel if it's already exists. You know, science is science, and so the regulations are there. It's just for us to codify it into our laws. But let's say something happens, or at least we've got the best liability coverage in terms of insurance and the security that if anything happens over and above. Every company that comes to drill now, they're going to have to sign up to that. So in terms of cleanup, you know, the government would not be liable for cleanup operation. So, you know, we're going to move there eventually to get the regulations, but I hear this all the time. Well, you know, you're not ready. You know, I know, like I said, you know, the agency itself is developing the capabilities. The other thing that I've been talking about that I think is very, very important is for us to have staff out there, you know, if as much as possibly, even 24/7, as long as operations are going on, for us to be right on site, observing and monitoring the operations to make sure that everything is in compliance. And from my experience, it's a key part of preventing incidents from occurring, to have that person looking over the shoulder of the operators. Not that we don't trust them, but you know, you got to trust and make sure and verify. You know, so we don't have that capability right now. Even you know, I talk about even including unannounced visits. We don't have that capability, but we're gonna get there eventually. So those are the kinds of things that we're building up towards in terms of monitoring the oil and gas.
Okay, well, there you have it, Guyana. Something to definitely look forward to, and a little bit more information with regards to our regulation for oil and gas sector. So, Dr. Adams, you just mentioned about, you know, being able to provide environmental authorization. I know for 2019 we were a little focused on our level of compliance.
Yes.
But let's talk about what has been happening with regards to providing environmental authorizations. For 2019, had the agency set a goal in terms of numbers of environmental authorizations to be issued? And if there was a goal set, was that goal attained during 2019?
Well, you set a goal for 2019?
Yes.
Well, we did not. Like I said, when I arrived in 2018, you know, we went back, and then here we are with 500 and something permits that were expired, and so now then we did not have the capability to even go out into the fields. It so happened that just by bringing in those permits, the ones that had only expired, I'm not talking about permits that are out of compliance. So we brought in those, we have brought those expired permits up to date, and believe it or not, just bringing those expired permits with the fees that were due, it's between 130 to 140 million dollars that brought in. So we were able to use that money without going back to the treasury. We were able to use that money to do a lot of things that we're doing right now, like hiring extra staff, purchasing the 7 extra vehicles that we currently have now that could be able now to provide for people to go out there and monitor. So we didn't set a goal. It so happened that we achieved a really major goal. I don't think that in anybody's wildest dream we would have even set such a high goal to bring all this, because it took a lot of work and going out there and even threatening people that you better come in or else, you won't have an operation, etc. We didn't set a goal, but for 2020 and 2021, we will be setting those goals.
Okay.
And one of the first things that we will be doing, and now that the other thing is setting up our document control center. So now we're able to track and control and understand what documents we have and what we don't, and going back and looking at every permit now to look and see which permits are out of compliance and to bring those into compliance. So we can set goals now, and since we know what we have, and to go there and see what our capacity is to perform and set those goals for 2020 and beyond.
Okay, so I know, well, being a part of, getting everything back into compliance and the whole enforcement process, we created something called a shame list too.
Yes.
Where, we would publish the name of developers to, just
Yes.
let the public know that these are the people that are operating without an environmental
Yes.
authorization, and, that they needed to be able to come in and, sort that whole system out. But, to ensure that we do not fall back into that path, what plans do you have to ensure, this level of enforcement and that these developers keep that level of compliance that's required by the agency?
Yes, important question. Like again, that's our brand and budget. To issue authorizations, make sure that they're kept in compliance. Now, what was happening in the past? Again, you've got developers and operators all over the country. Their permit expires. You got to travel all the way from Region 1, Region 2, Region 9, 8, 7. And it's inconvenient for them. It costs them money, so they keep putting it off, etc., and they keep operating. That's how, a lot of them went out of compliance. Now, we do not have the capability to go to the field because, we don't have transportation. It's very expensive to fly out to go visit them. So what we're doing with the additional vehicles and the ability now, because the first major step is to bring those permits that had expired. So we know exactly what we have. So, and here's the other problem. We, as an agency, we did not even know how many permits we had. We couldn't find permits. Permits were all over the, we had no document control. So now what we've done, we've developed an entire big room, a big center, where everything is controlled, everything is tracked. A document comes in, it doesn't matter if it's a letter or not, it passes through that center. It's logged in electronically and in hard copy in a shell. When any document goes out, it's also logged in, tracked. Any of the employees want to come and use a file, they got to check it out. They got a certain time limit to bring it back, but we know where everything. So now we know how many files we have and how many operations we have. So the next step is for us to go through every single file. Each department will go through every file. So we go into the next step now. The first was expiration, so now we're going to go and look at deficiencies. So we're going to be doing inspections all over the country to make sure that everyone and all the operators are in compliance. And this is not an exercise to be a pain, in anybody's rear. It's really the safety and health and safety and the environment of the country. And it's also good for the developer's brand, because they don't want for some accident to occur or for their product to be defective because they don't want to go there and they get a bad name, then people are not going to buy their products or not trust them. So it helps everybody. And the other thing that I want to let people know, that we're not in the business, we do not enjoy shutting people down. We've had several situations where companies are not in compliance, but as long as they cooperate, we're willing to allow them to continue to operate while they get in compliance. And I always keep talking about DDL, one of our biggest companies in the country. They messed up big time. They spilled an entire tank of waste that flooded out an entire neighborhood of waste. But then they were very cooperative from day one to work with us to correct that situation. Now, what has happened here is that they now have the best environmental department. They have the best technology that they're applying before they emit water for water treatment and everything. So they are now become a kind of a high-tech agency that has increased the environmental emissions and it has increased their operations efficiently, etc. So it really helps. You work with us, and we're going to work with you. But if, like I said before, if you're uncooperative and disrespectful, then we're going to really, we're not going to tolerate that, and it may come to you not being able to operate if you're out of compliance.
So developers, remember, it is your responsibility to ensure that your environmental permit is up to date, or that you do have an environmental permit if you require one, or we're going to come get you.
And that's one of the main reasons why we're even going to them, rather than they having to come to the main office, because we understand, we know and recognize that that's a difficulty. So we're going to them, so we're going to be easily accessible. So there wouldn't be any kind of an excuse, not to make sure that it's their responsibility to. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, that's most certainly. All right, so I know complaints continue to be a major issue for the agency. As of 2019, we received 569 complaints. Do you believe that, given the public's knowledge of the EPA and, persons are more conscious about environmental issues, that may be the reason for the growth in our complaint database? And further, what systems has the agency, or how has the agency been able to manage these complaints?
Yes, and I think there's some truth to that the agency has gained a lot of visibility here in recent times, and I think the public, they realize that, we have been responsive, even with the limited capability at this current time. We have been responsive. As you know, one of the rules that we now have in the agency, that we will respond to any complaint, even if it's to say here, we've acknowledged your complaint and we're going to get it as soon as possible. And then we're going to make sure that it's closed out with whoever's the complainant, to say, well, okay, here's what we've done to close this thing, or we're investigating, or here are the actions we're taking, and even bring them in, and with the people or the company they're having complaints against, for us to have a discussion. So we're doing all, and I think people see. I think it's more the responsiveness, that we're not just ignoring them. We have been very responsive, and I think that's what's triggering. And the way that we're handling it, as a matter of fact, now we've set up an entire kind of a unit that is handling complaints, dedicated. That, for example, if the complaints come in, it's logged in again, documented. It goes to the department that's supposed to be handling it, and then there's a coordinator to make sure that the status. Matter of fact, in my morning briefings, I have a special sheet for complaints that gives me a status on every single complaint. So I track that. As a matter of fact, it's color-coded. Those that are behind schedule are in red, etc. Those are on schedule is in green. So we pay special attention to complaints.
All right. So in closing, Dr. Adams, we all know change is very inevitable, and the agency has gone through quite a lot of changes in 2019. But what would you say would be your long-term vision for the agency come 2020 and forward?
And this is an easy question. This is an easy question for me to answer, to be honest. From day one, I've said that, and it's a serious vision, is to make this agency the best government agency in the country, and for other government entities to use as a model. And I think we've gone a far way of doing that this year. And it includes several different elements. Besides, the very first thing is changing the culture. I mean, that's the fundamental, changing the culture of the people. And then the second part of that is developing the people, because they're the most important asset for any entity, agency, or otherwise. And then the other things are going to come in place. If you can change attitude, and this whole culture, discipline, and focus, if you can change those fundamentals, I think we can accomplish. The other things in terms of training and getting equipment and all that kind of stuff is more secondary. If you can do those fundamental things, people are going to be on board. They're going to take their jobs at heart. They're going to like where they are, you know, as the best agency to work for. They're going to dedicate themselves to it and give it their best. And if you can get that, I think we will have accomplished our goal of making this the best agency in the nation.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Adams, for being here with us. We look forward to having you on many more episodes as we go forward. And thank you, Guyana, for sharing your time with us. This has been The Environment Matters, and I will see you next time.